Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. I'm excited. It's going to be a snowy day, but it's still kind of nice out there. Um, we'll get rocking and rolling here in just a second, but I wanted to say thank you to those of you showing up early and on time by giving you a tip. And it's funny because the fact that you're showing up early and on time, maybe you're not the ones who need this tip. But this morning I posted something on LinkedIn. I want you to go take a look at it. It's just a big yellow box that I did. And there's 996 RFIs or sources sought that are due in the next 30 days. And so I just put that on LinkedIn as a reminder with a link to Sam so you could go check out these opportunities. And what I encourage you to do is to browse through all 1,000 of them. This is really strategic thinking when I do this. I can search on a NAICS code, I can search on a keyword, but often the government makes mistakes or the data is just not in SAM the way we think it is. And so we could miss opportunities. And what I recommend you do is just browse through 1,000 opportunities. It does two things. One is it helps you make sure you don't miss anything. So I actually found 12 different opportunities that I sent to one of my customers, and I found a whole bunch of opportunities for a bunch of other people, including people who aren't my customers. And I sent it and said, hey, I think this is a fit for you. I don't know if it is or it's not, but I was able to bring it to their attention with no real extra effort on my part. So that's the second thing is you can really strengthen your network by giving. And if you're looking for RFIs that match your company and you see something that might fit for, Kevin or David or Benita, who I'm seeing right there on my chat screen, if you can see something for them because you know what they sell, that Kevin, for example, does IT and database services, and you see an opportunity. You don't do that work, but you see it like, oh, hey, Kevin, I don't know if you noticed this. He can say thanks and run with it or not run with it. You're not trying to get anything out of it. And so just browsing. So take a look at that post. It's a really good post that's out there. And I love doing that because I can take a look at it. All right, so let's get rocking and rolling. Let me turn off my screen scrolling. I think I'm good here. I often get asked, and this is kind of the purpose of today's training, right? Is I often get asked, how come I'm not being awarded contracts, right? Not winning contracts. We'll get to that in a separate training, which I've done a ton of. But the question being, how come I'm not being awarded contracts? And this kind of proactive thing. One of the things that I've been teaching since 2018, when I first started into the GovCon chamber and being a coach compared to being an actual small business owner and government contractor, is I've been teaching people there's no conspiracy among all the contracting officers, the acquisition personnel to hold us small businesses down. There is no conspiracy. Literally in the same office, sometimes those people don't talk to each other. And the thing to keep in mind when you ask yourself, how come I'm not being awarded contracts, I ask you to look inside rather than outside for that reason, or that solution. I like to say, take responsibility in order to gain control. Responsibility is not blame. I'm not telling you to blame anybody else. In fact, I'm telling you not to blame anybody else, but I'm also not telling you to blame yourself or somebody in your company. Don't blame anybody. But if we take responsibility for our own success, then we put control in our hands, not their hands. An example is if I sit there and say the whole reason I'm not being awarded contracts is because the contracting officer, blah, 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 right? Well, I have to wait for that contracting officer to change what they're doing, to improve themselves, to do something better or right before I'll start having success. Well, I pretty much can be waiting forever for that to happen, right? But if I sit there and say that my response or the responsibility is mine, then I can look at my day and go, well, what am I doing every day, every week, every month? What am I doing for 2025? What have I planned out that can lead to my success because I have control over that? And that's something I really want you to track on. And the last thing is just paying attention to the idea that all sales, right? Today we're talking about federal contracting, but all sales in general and winning contracts, they're just processes. You just follow a process and you're going to have success. When you follow those processes, you're going to achieve the goals you want. And that's what I want for you. That's why I'm doing today's training on understanding why you're not winning federal contracts. So we're going to go into that a little bit. I have 3 reasons that I'm suggesting that maybe you're not winning or being awarded federal contracts. These are not the only reasons. These are just 3 really good reasons that I think it's important for you to be tracking on and to kind of level set within your company and with your colleagues. In today's training, I want to cover down on 3 topics within this this training session. First one is, and by the way, if I'm seeming a little faltered, I apologize. I'm sick, pretty much off work for the whole day except for the training, but I'm kind of a little wishy-washy. But my content's really solid. Fortunately, it's on a slide. So 3 things I want to break down today. First off, the 3 reasons, just kind of spoiler alert right up front. The 3 reasons are federal buyers can't find you when they need you. And I want to talk about how that is and what you can do, right? Second thing is you're not responding to enough sources sought. And this is a really important thing to understand. Sometimes that means not just enough, but it's enough quality responses or enough responses to the right RFIs and sources sought. And we'll dig into that. And then the last one is you just don't have enough past performances to attract the federal buyers. When they look at your company and they look at your past performances, they're not the right ones. And so I'm going to talk to you about that, and then what are the right ones, and how can you look at that and proactively drive the success that you want and really be able to drive buyers to you in a better way. So if that's what you're looking for, is to have a proactive approach to government contracting and success in 25. If you really want to address that, put "I'm proactive" in the chat. I'm proactive. Thanks, Crystal and others. And the whole idea, by the way, of "I'm proactive", it's the opposite of "I'm reactive". Reactive means I'm going to sit back and wait for something to happen and success is going to happen, right? I'm going to observe all these things. Proactive means I'm going to sit there and say, okay, what can I do? How can I roll up my sleeves and get started? So put "I'm proactive" in the chat to let me know that you're proactive and you want to see what I got to teach you today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I am the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, co-founder of GovCon in a Box, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner after I got out of the Army. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. This is what I want for you. And this is why I teach you process over and over again, so that you can understand the process, start getting good at it, and then have repeatable, predictable results. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the Government Contracting Success newsletter. This is my government contracting newsletter on LinkedIn. It is the largest one by far out there because we only focus on tips that can help you drive forward in sales. The other thing is track on tomorrow's training. If you haven't registered for tomorrow's training, basically it's the best federal agencies in 2025 to pursue, especially as we got all these kind of things changing out there. If you were here for my training yesterday, I was talking about the changes the Trump administration's leading, et cetera. So tomorrow I'm going to drive into the top federal agencies you should be really thinking about. I wanted to just congratulate the 144 companies, I think, and actually let me make myself a little smaller here for 1 second. I'm always excited to look at these companies. I was looking again today at all of the data that federal buyers can look at. And if you don't know this, there's 350,000 plus small businesses registered to sell to the federal government who have updated their profile in the last 12 months. That means these are real people who want to be selling to the federal government. Of those 350,000, only 144 of them have a perfect federal visibility score. This is how visible are you to federal buyers using their tools. And so go to GovCon in a Box. Let me shrink this back down so you can see that URL. Go to govconinabox.com. Check out your own score. Get in there and make sure you put a link, not on my system, but on the government system. It's all free to do. I just give you the guidance within GovCon in a Box. Go over there, take a look at it, because so many of us are invisible to the federal buyers, 70 or 80% of us. That one thing that you do could massively increase your visibility to buyers. And actually, that's probably the very first slide we're going to be tackling in today's topic. Federal buyers can't find you when they need you, right? And that goes with that 100 club. This is really important. If you don't know this, and I want to back up for a second, in the federal market, we have buyers. These buyers are basically the contracting officers, the program office, and all the people in between, right, and supporting. So these people follow an acquisition life cycle. So in the government, they call it an acquisition because they're buying. What we call it is a sales life cycle. And we align the acquisition life cycle to our sales life cycle. That way we know where our opportunities are at on that life cycle, right? And the idea of finding you, a government buyer finding you, they don't do that when the RFP drops, when they're looking for responses, a quote or a proposal. They do that left. We call it shifting left of the RFP or shifting left in the sales life cycle. You want to get in early in this phase they call market research. Market research, without going too far into it, is designed to help the government identify two main things, right? Is to resolve around the technical scope of work. And it doesn't matter whether it's cleaning bathrooms or cybersecurity or artificial intelligence, it doesn't matter. It's still a scope of work. And so part of market research, and generally this is called an RFI, a request for information, they're exploring the requirements. Do we have our task areas correctly? I literally saw somebody out today. I got to find this because it was beautiful. They put out a sources sought notice on SAM, and they had like 10 or 12 questions, and they were all about shaping the acquisition, everything I teach all the time. But what the government was saying was the reason we're doing this sources sought is we want to know what's the best contract vehicle to use. Are we using the right NAICS code? And that shifts it out of the technical scope into what we call the acquisition approach. And so you have the technical approach, if you will, and the acquisition approach. That's what market research is. And a big portion of this, and this is why I'm trying to drive into today's topic of federal buyers finding you when they need to, is the contracting officer in particular, right? And the small business team that are in there, they're trying to decide, should we make this opportunity a requirement to the government, but an opportunity to us? Should we make this thing full and open, meaning anybody, large or small businesses, can compete for this requirement? Or do we think that small businesses can do it and we should set it aside to small business? Or should we even set it aside further to like women-owned small business, right? And so this is a decision they're trying to make. They're doing market research in many different ways that are out there. And I just wanted to cover one today, the most important one by far. And so consider this one 90%, and the other one, all of the other ways are 10% of the market research and how they find you. DSBS, the Dynamic Small Business Search Tool, it's part of SAM.gov. And so when we register to sell to the government, we register in SAM. The SBA has additional information that we can provide that describe our company, and those two make our small business profile. In DSBS, a federal buyer can go in there and say, I'm searching for a hub zone that does cybersecurity, as an example. You want to make sure that you're visible. When I talked about the 100 Club and the federal visibility score, certain things that are in there that are vital, things like keywords. Do you have the right keywords in that the buyer is going to use? There's a field called capability statement. Literally, your PDF capability statement just needs to have a link in there. It takes you 2 to 5 minutes max to do, free, and you can do it all by yourself on the government tools. And over 80% of us, 90% of us don't even have a link in there. And the reason this is really a bad idea is because when the government is looking for you, they start setting filters. There's this thing called shortlisting that happens. It happens everywhere, right? Imagine if you're going to be hiring people for your own company and you sit there and say, look, I'm looking for people who have a college degree. It's like, okay, if you don't have a college degree and your resume comes across, you're shortlisted out, right? You're just taken off the list. And what buyers are trying to do, and what all of us do when we're shortlisting, is we're not trying to find the best options. We're trying to get rid of all the people who are not eligible. This is why, like, when you submit a proposal, yes, you want to be compelling and convincing, like I teach you should write. But first and foremost, you need to be compliant with what they say. For example, only 25 pages. If it comes with 26, you're out. It doesn't matter if you're the very best choice for the government. You didn't follow their guidelines, and so you're out. Well, shortlisting is kind of that same thing. It's not shall statements, but the government does do things like they might sit there and say, well, I want to filter it by women-owned small businesses. All right, for those of us who aren't a woman-owned small business, we won't show up. The government might say, hey, only show me ones that accept credit cards. 100,000 small businesses say that they do not accept credit cards. All you have to do is change that to yes in SAM. It doesn't mean you have to take the money from the government, but now you're on the short list, right? I don't know why you wouldn't take the money. but it doesn't mean you have to. So things like that are in the DSBS tool, and you can find that on connect.sba.gov. It is really important on this first step for you to understand that one of the reasons we're not winning or being awarded contracts by federal buyers is because they can't even find us. One of the things I'm going to show real soon, working with my co-founders in GovCon in a Box, but I'm going to show this very soon of how many companies like yours have experience listed in USA spending, meaning you've been paid before, but you don't have that experience listed in DSBS. And the problem is the federal buyer looks at DSBS first. They don't go to USA spending until farther in the acquisition lifecycle. Initially, they're just trying to do market research. Well, what if you had 5 experiences, but because they're not in DSBS, the government thinks you've never been paid for the work before, and they shortlist you. These kind of things are very simple to fix, no cost and really minimal time to fix, but they increase the likelihood the federal buyer is going to be able to find you when they need you and when they're trying to make the decision about who they can work with. All right, so that's the first reason you might not be getting awarded contracts. The second reason is you're not responding to enough sources sought. And I don't necessarily mean you, but you. All right, so let's just level set what sources sought are. I said it a minute ago, but in the market research phase of the federal acquisition lifecycle, the federal buyer, that could be anybody within the government, goes out and submits a sources sought notice in SAM or whatever contract vehicle or portal that's out there, SAM being one of the big ones, right? I told you this morning there's 996. Actually, after I did the post, it went over 1,000, currently 1,000 sources sought that are due the next 30 days, right? And I found 12 for one of my customers alone. And so this is something we want to pay attention to. But sources sought are where the government's reaching out to industry, small businesses in particular, and saying, hey, can you guys do it? I really quickly want to address this thing in case you've heard of it called the rule of 2. Forget about it. Forget about it. It doesn't mean anything, right? Some people will talk about it as if it's the FAR, something in the FAR and blah, 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 but that's not reality. That's not sales. The rule of 2 means the idea behind it is if 2 SDVOs, service disabled veteran-owned small businesses, could do the work, then the government will set it aside. First off, there is no will or shall, right? They can say whatever they want, but the contracting officer can do whatever they want. The second thing is it's not about whether you two just raise your hand and say, hey, we can do it. And say, oh, okay, let's do it. The government needs to be confident that they're going to get 2 proposals that are both legitimate proposals that they could award to either one of them. If they can expect that, then they can set it aside, or they might be motivated to set it aside. But the reality is you have to back that up to the proposal. They need to expect that they're going to get 5 or 10 proposal responses, and maybe less if they're using a particular contract vehicle, but they need to get a sufficient amount of proposals in order to end up with 2 that are good. And before the proposal, sources sought, they need to get 10 or 20 or 30 from the SDVO pool or the women-owned small business companies to go, you know what, I feel like if I set this aside to women-owned small businesses, then enough of them are going to respond that I will have at least 2 good qualified winners that we just have to pick. And so it's really important that you pay attention to sources sought. It's that market research document or phase. I put here that I just really want to drive home my number one reason why sources sought responses are really important. And I say RFI and sources sought interchangeably. Imagine whatever you sell, right? Think about this and think about the agency you want to get into, the Army or Department of Homeland Security or something. You want to get in there and there's this office, let's say it's this cybersecurity office or something within the Army, and you want to get in there. Imagine how good it would be if you could get in and have a meeting with, senior leaders, not SES level or something, but like senior directors, the people who are doing the work, to be able to talk about your company. Now imagine it typically is a 30-minute meeting and you're in there and you're doing whatever, maybe you're meeting with one person. Now imagine you're in a meeting and it's an hour meeting and you've got 10 people there and they're all looking at you and listening with bated breath on what you have to say, right? They're not looking at their watch or doing something else. Well, that's how I say an RFI is. course, there's exceptions. I don't need to care about the exceptions. But the norm is when you submit a response to that agency, let's say the Army, and it's about cybersecurity, and you're submitting a response to an RFI or source of sought notice, those people are going to read it. That's why they ask for it, is they're trying to see your insight. And the better you write it, the more they're going to appreciate it, the more they're going to remember you, the more likely you'll be invited back in. And so I put down a couple of suggestions here. You need to be writing one response per week minimum. And this is something that's really important. If you're brand new, don't always listen to the guidance that's for companies that are farther along. Figure out where the guidance fits. If you're brand new, you should be working with small businesses as a teammate. Now you should help them write one a week or something. You don't necessarily need to get it out yourself if you're brand new, because maybe it's not really going to go anywhere. But if you could help another company who's got more experience than you win a contract and you take 25% or something, that's a good day, right? And for the rest of us, writing one per week is not hard. If you tried to start today, it's going to take you a little time. But as you start looking out, I just told you there's 1,000 that are out there. But these are just the ones that are in SAM. You can go look at all the GSA mass schedules. You can go to Seaport Next Gen or Oasis or whatever. All these different contract vehicles, even if you're not a holder, you can develop a relationship with the contractors who have those prime contract vehicles and ask if they can kind of, shoot you email notifications of all the task orders, whatever it is. You can begin to find enough. The government buys enough of what you do. You just got to find it. One thing I do say is make sure when you're writing responses and you're going after sources sought that you're only doing slam dunk opportunities. I describe this as opportunities that look like they were written for you. And sometimes it's totally okay if I look in and it's just 2 task areas out of 7. I'm like, whoa, those were written for me. That's cool. I'm going to go find a teammate and say, these 2 were written for me. I would love to team up with you and, be able to do this work. And I can write the response for the RFI with you and give you that material. I already kind of alluded to this, but when I say one response per week minimum, don't make excuses for why you can't do that. It's hard for me too. I get it. but if we're going to build the businesses the way we want and to have the success we want, then we've got to do enough of that right activity, and allowing ourselves to miss it is not a good goal. I'll give you a quick sales tip. There's something we always talk about. This great line, I don't know if you'll think it's great, but this line says, if you have to eat a frog, like if you look at your task and one of your tasks says you have to eat a frog, eat it first. If you have to eat 2 frogs today, eat the big one first, then the smaller one. And what it's saying, the whole idea behind this is take your hardest, most important task and put it at 8 a.m. in the morning or whatever your version is of the start. Don't even look at your emails, right? The first thing you do in the morning is go, I'm finding at least one RFI I can respond to. And it doesn't matter whether it's this week or 3 weeks from now when it's due. Every day I'm going to look for an hour and find it until I've got this rhythm where I'm able to respond to at least one a week, right? And so you can focus on the early morning tasks, make them around the hardest things to do. And if you think finding an RFI is hard, just make it the first thing and just work at it till you get it. Pretty soon you will get good at it. And then I already talked about the other one. I did want to pause 1 second. I only got a few minutes, but do me a favor. I have this huge audience, almost 37,000. So maybe a couple of days, and I'll be at 37,000 followers. These are GovCon connections for the most part in LinkedIn. I want them to know what you do. So right now in the chat, do me a favor. Oh, it's Brian Tracy. Thanks, John. Do me a favor. In the chat, write, I sell. An example is, I don't know if Jay Madigan's here today, but he's one of the people who's been here forever and very supportive of the community. He would write, I sell water management to federal agencies. I just want you to say that. I sell cybersecurity. Don't write this long thing with a bunch of keywords, et cetera. Just write a small sentence, like 5-6 words. I sell ASL services to federal agencies. I sell this to federal agencies. I want to see a bunch of things on there. It will do 2 things, right? It will, one, obviously it'll sit there and build up the activity on here. I definitely am trying to do that because I'm constantly trying to build our community. My network is your network. The other thing is when you put this in my post here, like John just put, I sell change management and training. because John Lowe wrote that, it's in our discussion and chat here, but it also now will go out to John's feed. John has just communicated to his LinkedIn feed, I sell change management and training, right? I sell cybersecurity services and products. So you guys got to go and do that, and let's see how many we get as I wrap up my training. 20, I've got 4 minutes and and a lot. Okay, so this last one's a really important one to me. It's something I try to teach people a lot about past performances, and it is a weakness with the 8A program. The 8A program encourages people to get contracts in different agencies in different areas. That's not a good idea. In sales, you want to be really focused. For example, pick the Army or DOD, but don't go to a bunch of agencies. Pick one thing you do. For example, I sell tractors and lawnmowers. Then Craig only sell tractors and lawnmowers. Don't start selling cybersecurity. Don't sell snowplow services or whatever, whatever's out there. Stay super focused and you will have the right past performances, because you're going to have all this related past performance. When a federal buyer starts looking at you, they're going to see that your past performance is all the same over and over again. I sell strategic medical communication. When I look at that, and Goldina, I look at that and then I see she has this past performance, this one, and it's all within that space. I start looking at her as the supreme domain authority in medical communication services, right? I'm like, wow, that company's got it cold. They're doing it everywhere. They got so many past performances, and it's not these random things, right? And I call it supreme domain authority. When you get to this stage, you can compete full and open against larges. I was a small business in my last company competing against Microsoft, a multi-billion-dollar company, and Booz Allen and these others. I didn't even think of Booz Allen as my competitor. It was Microsoft. I did Microsoft SharePoint, and I was able to go toe-to-toe with them because all of my experience was SharePoint, and it was all within the DoD for the most part. Okay, and then another way of focusing is to really just help them understand that you're a subject matter expert. When all your past performance is that way, they're going to see it. Okay, so here's my recommendation. Drink water when you talk. I sell residential and commercial construction services. I like reading those. I appreciate that. I really love this way of seeing it. Okay, here's what I want you to see for your past performance. And this can be for a brand new company and $1 billion company who is going into a new space. For example, $1 billion company, AI is kind of all brand new. If they're trying to get into it, they need to start getting a bunch of small contracts. They might look at AI projects on their own existing contracts, right? They'll have a lot of big advantages. But for any of us, the first step is the first milestone is to get 10 small subcontracts. I don't care if it's $3,000, right? It doesn't matter. You just want to be able to list past performance with a title, a little description. Later on, they can ask you, was it 3,000 or 3 million? But first, you're trying to get that past performances doing the same thing, which then allows you to get bigger past performances or subcontracts, right? Excuse me. And now I'm talking about 100,000 or a million plus. And you want these larger subcontracts, again, where you're getting on somebody else's team and you're owning one particular area. And then the last thing is you start building your own prime past performances. You actively seek out contracts that are in that core competency. When I sell education and training courses or something, I sell construction. When I see those things, then all of your work needs to be that way. When you do that, you can get bigger and bigger contracts because you can show 6-figure contracts get you 7, 7-figure contracts get you 8. And there's a pattern there, right? And so keep that in mind as you move forward. Here's what I want you to remember from today's training. First off is be findable and attractive. What this means is go into DSBS and make sure you're visible to federal buyers. Go to govconinabox.com. I give you a free way to find out what your score is. I tell you everything you need to do to get it up to full visibility. Second thing is respond to slam dunk RFIs and sources sought. And the last one is make sure you're planning your past performance. Don't let it just happen. Sit there and say, I want 10 that are like this. If you're the boss of a company and you got a couple of people, tell them, hey, these are the opportunities I want, not some random win. I need all related stuff. It makes me writing the next proposal It makes that effort so much easier. Hey, if you're interested in working with me, you can check out govconchamber.com/coach. It's a paid program, so if you're not at a certain stage, don't bother. This is why I do all this free training. And speaking of the training, speaking of your day, just remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training.